October 18th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with a massive blast at a Gaza hospital on Tuesday. Hundreds of people are feared dead after an explosion at the medical center, with Hamas blaming Israel, and Israel saying Palestinian Islamic Jihad is responsible. The UN condemned the attack, calling for the immediate protection of civilians and healthcare facilities. Following the hospital blast, U.S. President Joe Biden cancels the Jordan leg of his Middle East trip. The announcement came as he left for Israel to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The U.S. further tightens China's access to AI chips by slapping restrictions on the export of advanced computing chips to China. A massive blast hit a hospital in central Gaza on Tuesday, killing hundreds of patients and civilians. Hamas blamed the Israeli airstrike, while Israeli military forces said Palestinian Islamic Jihad were behind the blast. Our Ishihu has the latest. A massive blast struck Al-Aliyah Rabi Baptist Hospital in the center of Gaza City on Tuesday local time. A Palestinian health ministry official said at least 500 people were killed in the blast. Hamas said that an Israeli airstrike hit the hospital, while the Israeli Defense Forces said that misfired rockets by Palestinian Islamic Jihad militants were to blame. The group has denied the accusation. Hundreds of patients and civilians were reportedly seeking shelter at the hospital. Survivors of the strike were transferred to another hospital 1.5 kilometers away. The World Health Organization condemned the attack.
WHO strongly condemns the attack on Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in the north of the Gaza Strip. The hospital was operational with patients, healthcare givers, and internally displaced people sheltering there.
The UN agency chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus on social media also called for the immediate protection of civilians and healthcare. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East also said at least 6 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit a school in Gaza run by the agency. Reuters, meanwhile, reported that an Israeli airstrike killed the Hamas armed commander Ayman Nofal in charge of the central Gaza area. Ishihu, Arirang News. And following the Gaza hospital blast, U.S. President Joe Biden's summit with leaders from Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority has been canceled. Just as he was set to take off to Israel, he is on his way to Israel now to reaffirm Washington's solidarity. Lee Kyung-in reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden is heading to Israel on Wednesday. That is according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken following his more than 7-hour-long meeting in Tel Aviv with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his board cabinet.
He's coming here at a critical moment for Israel, for the region, and for the world. And he's coming here to do the following. First, the President will reaffirm the United States' solidarity with Israel and our ironclad commitment to its security.
Biden's visit comes as fears are growing that the latest flare-up in the Israel-Hamas war could spill into other countries in the region. Tensions have been escalating in the Middle East, with Israel exchanging fire with Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah near its northern border with Lebanon. Iran has issued warnings against Israel's operations in Gaza.
Leaders of the resistance will not allow the Zionist regime to do whatever it wants in Gaza and then go after other resistance groups after it's done with Gaza. Therefore, any preemptive action is possible in the coming hours.
With world leaders such as UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressing the importance of avoiding further regional escalation, experts predict President Biden will also use his visit to avert the war's expansion. Addressing the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza is also on Biden's agenda, where civilians are facing severe shortages of water, electricity, and fuel.
The President will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not benefit Hamas.
Biden will also continue his efforts to secure the release of at least 199 hostages held by Hamas. The militant group on Monday released a video showing a 21-year-old Israeli hostage who appeared to be suffering from an arm injury. This marks the first time that Hamas has made public a video of a hostage held in Gaza. 이경은, Arirang News.
Washington has announced a set of rules to update and strengthen restrictions on the export of advanced computing chips to China, in an apparent move to further curb China's technological advancement. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Department of Commerce on Tuesday announced a set of rules to update and strengthen its restrictions on the export of advanced computing semiconductors to China. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security released an update to rules for strengthening export controls after guidelines were published a year ago to restrict China from purchasing and manufacturing high-end chips deemed critical for military advantage. Among the updated rules are notification requirements for the export of certain chips with performance just below the restricted threshold. It also includes new rules to prevent companies from China and other countries of concern from securing controlled chips through their foreign subsidiaries. According to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, the updates on the measures are set up to increase the effectiveness of U.S. controls and further shut off pathways to evade restrictions. She added that the controls remain Washington's clear focus on military applications and confront the threats to its national security posed by the Chinese government's military-civil fusion strategy. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department also added 13 Chinese companies to its entity list, a list of firms considered to be involved in activities contrary to U.S. national security and foreign policy interests. Tuesday's release noted that foundries producing chips for listed firms will need a Bureau of Industry and Security license before the foundries may send such chips to these entities or parties acting on behalf of these entities. The latest announcement comes after the department issued a rule last week updating general authorizations for South Korean chipmakers Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix to continue supplying their China-based plants with certain U.S. semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's widely believed that the Bank of Korea will leave the policy rate unchanged for the 6th time straight in Thursday's rate-setting meeting. Then, should we be relieved to say that the rate hike cycle is over now? For more, we are joined by Professor Shin Myung-gyu this morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
South Korea's central bank is expected to leave the policy rate unchanged at 3.5% tomorrow. Professor Shim, are you also on the same page?
Yes, I also think that the BOK will not raise the target rate at this upcoming meeting by several reasons. First, the Fed did not raise its target rate in its previous meeting, giving more room for the BOK to keep the same rate. Second, as was emphasized by the recent report by the IMF, the household debt in Korea is really the problem. According to the IMF, DSR level was the second highest among all the countries that reported DSR last year, and that makes the BOK to hesitate raising the rate. Third, compared to the last year, inflation rate measured by the CPI has become lower.
I see. Then let's delve deeper, Professor Shim. Can the crisis over in the Middle East become a factor in the BOK's interest rate decision-making in the future, or has it already?
Sure, and I think it has already become one of the key factors that the BOK should care about. Most importantly, it will increase the uncertainty on the oil price as the crisis can be expanded to the Middle East. Price of both Brent and WTI crude oils have surged around 5 to 7% since the emergence of the war. While there might be no immediate impact on the inflation rate in Korea from the war, because it will take some time to observe the kind of the spillover effect from the war, but it will eventually affect Korea. Also, a research by my colleague found that the increase in oil price uncertainty itself has the negative effects on the global economy, so that we also have another possibly negative news on Korea.
Sure, the more prolonged the war becomes, the heavier impact the crisis will have on South Korea. Now, if there is a rate freeze at 3.5% tomorrow, it'll be the sixth consecutive one since January, right? Now, in theory, ending the rate pause to tackle inflation should help revitalize spending here in the country. Is that the case?
I don't think that posing the interest rate hike can stimulate consumption or the economy, because consumption is not just a function of the interest rate. It is a function of current income, future income, and wealth as well. So that if the economic condition does not become better, then I don't think that just posing interest rate hike will increase consumption. So let me quickly point out that the expectations on the future economic activity in Korea has become worse since August again. This implies that on average, households in Korea would not want to increase their consumption expenditure as their views on future income are not rosy, and hence whether they will save rather than consume.
Sure. So the rate freeze will not directly influence the spending here in the country, you're saying. Then would you say the door for additional rate hikes this year is closed?
I still think that there still is a chance to raise the policy rate. The first reason is that the Fed still opens the door to increase its target interest rate. Second, inflation rate has rebounded in Korea since August, implying that this high inflationary episode might not have ended. Third, as I pointed out earlier, the Israel-Hamas war together with Ukraine-Russian war are remaining threats for the future inflation rate, so that the BOK has to prepare for the possible inflation in the future.
I see. Now that you've mentioned the Fed is scheduled to have two more rate-setting meetings this year, one in late October, later this month, and also in December. Considering what Jerome Powell is saying, the fight against inflation isn't over, we should probably assume rate hikes are on the way, right? If that's the case, when would that be?
Yes, I also expect that the Fed will raise its policy rate once again, maybe this year. And there are many reasons why I believe so. First, there are signs that the U.S. economy can still endure the potential hike in the rate. The labor market is still good, and consumption expenditure in the U.S. has increased for the several months, so that there is still room for the Fed to increase the interest rate. And also, as you pointed out, Jerome Powell continuously signals the financial market that the Fed can raise the rate. And the inflation rate was 3.7% last month, and it is still much higher than the target inflation rate of the Fed, which is 2%. So that I still think that there is a possibility that the Fed will increase the interest rate maybe this coming meeting or maybe later.
Right. So you mean by later, can we say that maybe next year? So are you saying that if there's no rate hike within the year, so within the next 2 months, there will still be another rate hike, at least in the first quarter of 2024, right?
Yeah, that's what I expect.
All right. Professor Shim, thank you so much for your time this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you, too.
As South Korea's role in the world continues to grow in its alliance with the U.S., and as a global pivotal state, the country's values are reinforcing democratic values in the world. According to Victor Cha, a former U.S. official on Asian affairs and an eminent expert on Korean Peninsula affairs, our president correspondent Oh Soo-young had the chance to sit down with him.
South Korea is now an equal partner of the United States, with the potential to join the Group of 7 nations to cooperate on mounting global security threats and challenges. That's according to Victor Cha, a former US National Security Council Director on Asian Affairs, speaking to Arirang News in Seoul. Amid reports of North Korea increasing weapons exchanges with Moscow, Cha voiced concern that Pyongyang's emboldened posture could make it harder to deter the regime's missile and nuclear ambitions.
The North Koreans were able to do quite well at gaining all the parts it needed for their ICBM program despite very harsh sanctions. So I worry about, especially if Russia facilitates it, I worry that the North Koreans will be able to get away with a lot.
He underscored the need for stronger deterrence measures by Seoul, Washington and Tokyo based on their trilateral Camp David agreements to ramp up three-way military measures to deter Pyongyang and mechanisms to jointly address common challenges across the Indo-Pacific region.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea, I think, is an equal partner. It used to be the case that the United States was sort of the senior ally and Japan and Korea were the junior partners. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it all starts with US, Japan, Korea. If that relationship is strong, then I think the United States feels like it's on solid footing, whether it's managing the rise of China or whether it's seeking broader regional architectures in Asia. The US, Japan, Korea relationship is core. It's core to that, based on common security interests, but common values, common norms, these sorts of things.
In this push for freedom, human rights and a rules-based global order, President Yoon Suk-yeol last year became the first Korean leader to attend the G7 meeting as a guest nation and was invited again to the Hiroshima summit in May. Cha believes the group of advanced democracies could become a G8 to include South Korea.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, the UN Security Council is not really functional because of China and Russia. Which means the United States and others need to seek out a new venue. But I do think, we're at a critical point right now in terms of being able to pull together three allies to move forward to shape the environment in which China will rise, and to work on things like supply chain, countering disinformation, these sorts of things.
With disinformation by state actors shaping biased views on global affairs, Cha also touched upon the role of media outlets in democracies to promote unbiased, accurate content.
Groups like Arirang, Yonhap, others that are sort of news-based, not with a lot of editorializing, if they make themselves available to these countries that are targets of Chinese disinformation, they can dramatically change the, I don't want to say alignment, the color, if you will, of the countries. They would no longer have to listen to Chinese media and populate the media platforms with Chinese content.
Having highlighted Seoul's democratic coming of age and growing soft power in his book co-authored by Ramon Pacheco Pardo, Cha noted how Seoul is taking initiative on areas like global development, health, supply chains and nuclear energy. In its quest to become a global pivotal state, Cha said South Korea has a lot to offer beyond its interests to benefit the world. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The South Korean national football team on Tuesday thrashed Vietnam 6-0 in their men's football friendly. Playing at the Swan World Cup Stadium, 5 different South Koreans got on the score sheet. The Taeguk Warriors took the lead just 5 minutes into the match, with Kim Min-jae scoring off his shoulder from Lee Kang-in's corner. Hwang Hee-chan made it 2-0 in the first half before Son Heung-min, Lee Kang-in and Chung Woo-young added goals after the break. And Vietnam gave up an own goal in the 50th minute. South Korea has now won 3 games straight and scored 10 goals in the past 2 matches.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the country has used US-supplied long-range missiles for the first time. This amid its ongoing war with Russia. Speaking on Tuesday evening, Zelensky said that the Army tactical missile system, or ATACMS missiles used, had been effective and proven themselves. He did not specify when the missiles were deployed, but there are reports that they were used to destroy 9 helicopters at Russian bases in East Ukraine, and that dozens of Russian troops were killed or injured. The ATACMS were delivered to Ukraine in secret, with their maximum range reduced from 300 to 160 kilometers, amid U.S. concerns about raising tensions with Russia. The missiles sent to Ukraine also carry cluster munitions instead of a single explosive charge. Now, in the Belgian capital of Brussels, the gunman who killed 2 Swedish citizens and injured another on Monday has been shot dead. Described by local media as a 45-year-old Tunisian man named Abdesalem, the shooter was killed on Tuesday morning local time after being confronted by authorities in a cafe. Police say they found a weapon on him and a bag of clothes. They added that the attack may be linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict. The gunman's death comes hours after he fatally shot 2 Swedish citizens and later admitted to the killings in a video posted to social media. Monday's shooting came ahead of a football match between Belgium and Sweden. The Euro 2024 qualifying match was abandoned at half-time over security concerns. Now, in a major setback to the rights of same-sex couples, India's Supreme Court on Tuesday refused to legalize same-sex marriages. The decision comes after the Supreme Court heard 21 arguments on the case between April and May this year. The top court instead said that the decision lies with India's parliament and that the court can only interpret the law and not make it. The justices instead voiced support for a government proposal to create a panel to review granting rights and benefits to same-sex couples. The court added that same-sex couples should be provided legal protections from the state and that denying them benefits and services given to heterosexual couples violates their fundamental rights. And finally, the Amazon River has fallen to its lowest level in over 120 years amid a severe drought. As of Monday, levels at the Brazilian port of Manaus were recorded at 13.59 meters compared to 17.6 meters 1 year ago. It's the lowest level since records began in 1902. Tributaries to the Amazon River have also dried up, leaving boats stranded and cutting off food and water supplies to remote villages. Meanwhile, high water temperatures are suspected of being behind the deaths of more than 100 endangered river dolphins. The drought follows months without rain and higher than normal temperatures that are being blamed on this year's El Niño climate phenomenon.
Good morning. Autumn colors arrived behind schedule on Bukhansan Mountain yesterday, coming 2 days later than usual. We had another chilly night helping autumn colors to expand. Single-digit morning temperatures to start out the day in Seoul, but highs will rise fast into the 20s this afternoon. Temperature swings could be nearly 20 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. Do dress accordingly for the weather today. Seoul will go up to 21 degrees. Daegu and Gwangju will see highs of 23 degrees Celsius under plenty of autumn sunshine during the day. And then central regions will see more clouds joining as the day goes on. Then rain is in the forecast from tomorrow in the capital and west of Gangwon-do from tomorrow at dawn, spreading nationwide Thursday. Rain could continue into Friday morning. And that band of rain will bring a big chill to the country this weekend. Plan accordingly and dress warmly for autumn activities you may want to enjoy this weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's lying? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We deliver stories on site. From Korea to the world, and from the world to Korea. We ask questions every day that could change the world. Taking news a step further, Arirang News. You're watching Arirang News. You're watching Arirang.
The president also remains committed to boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the state.
To discuss the current security
The
environment.
United Nations most powerful body on global security, expressing hope.
Stock markets around the world have taken a hit amid speculation that the U.S. Federal Reserve
Arirang.
웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's lying? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's October 18th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and you're watching News Generation, where we discuss the latest issues concerning our generation. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Good morning, Yeun.
Good morning, Xiang. And Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Yeun. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Studies show that people in their 20s and 30s are aging faster than their parents' generation. According to the data released by the National Health Insurance Service, the number of people in their 20s and 30s with chronic diseases has overwhelmingly increased. For instance, the number of those in their 20s and 30s with diabetes increased by 74% compared to 10 years ago. And experts believe young Koreans are aging faster than their parents because of their eating habits, which heavily rely on delivery food and junk food, as well as a lack of physical exercise. And the Human Resources Development Service of Korea has found that the number of millennials and Gen Zs taking tests to obtain practical licenses for blue-collar professions have been on the rise. The number of people in their 20s taking these tests to get a license in wallpapering more than doubled from the year 2018 to 2022. This study reflected the younger generation's mindset to prioritize high pay and life after work hours over social status and job stability. And the advent of AI has also opened the gateways for technologies like deepfakes to flourish. Recently, deepfake technology has developed drastically to the point that it's getting harder for people to tell apart real news stories from fake ones. Officials found those most vulnerable were teens and people in their 20s, also referred to as phono sapiens for relying on their phones as much as their body parts. This age group mostly consumes the news on social media, where a lot of deep fake-generated fake news is found. And the Korea Press Foundation found 6 out of 10 teens surveyed used YouTube or Facebook to access news. Only a little over 13% of the 2,500 surveyed said they went on the actual website of broadcast channel or news outlet. And that's why officials are calling for better media literacy education in the country, especially since the rapid development of generative AI tech like ChatGPT is increasing the chances of young users from accessing and then eventually believing in fake news. And countries like the US and Finland have been holding classes to better educate the public on how to tell apart real facts from fake news on these generative AI apps. So Chi-hee, could you tell us a bit more about how other countries have been trying to ramp up their own media literacy rates?
Well, looking at the various ways to raise media literacy skills of citizens worldwide, it's important to look at the intended audience first. So the major category of this would be campaigns, and they usually target the general public. And so these campaigns, there are things such as Be Media Smart campaign, which is carried out in Ireland, and the RAI Digital Pills series that's carried out in Italy. Both of them usually consist of a more general message that's targeting the public, the general public as a whole. It's delivered with the support from different media players like broadcasters as well as social media platforms. These campaigns, I mean, they may not be as detailed or as in-depth. However, they're really important in raising the overall literacy rate of media literacy rate among the public.
And I think the Western countries out there are doing a really good job in the fact that they are prioritizing AI development, but they're also taking a look at how to better regulate ethical issues regarding it, and also like things related to media literacy. Now, Xiang, what do you think South Korea needs to do to ensure a higher media literacy rate, especially among teens and those in their 20s?
Yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned, and I think what US and Finland is doing, integrating media literacy into the formal education system, into the curriculum itself might be a good idea. We have classes teaching information technology as well as social studies, ethics and things like that. And, according to the times, if we put some of the media literacy programs into that, would be a good idea for the Korean school children as well as people in their 20s here. And promoting digital literacy as well as promoting sort of critical thinking skills would be great, having a bit of skepticism. And I mean, media has always been manipulating the public. It's not just right now. I mean, now obviously it might be a bit more convincing with deep fakes and actual images that convey certain messages. But throughout history, even major news outlets were used for propaganda and things like that. And even nowadays, huge bias between media companies exist and news outlets exist. So I think it's a good chance to actually really think about media literacy, really think about by ourselves and determine whether it's safe for you to believe in it or not.
And I think I completely agree with you. If it's included in like our primary education curriculum, it'd be really nice for us to learn from a young age how to better detect what is actually real news from fake news. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's now switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. If you were given the chance to find out what will happen to you in the near future, would you take it? Well, it seems like that's a popular option among more millennials and Gen Z. So take a look at the screen to find out what exactly I'm talking about. Zodiac signs, MBTI, personal color tests, and now DNA tests. Some millennials and Gen Z sure love to categorize themselves and find out every detail about what their specific kind has to offer. Nowadays, DNA tests are blowing up among those in their 20s and 30s. Through these tests, people can find out all kinds of information, starting from what type of personality traits they have genetically to whether they'll experience hair loss in the coming years. Getting a clear sense of who I am, that seems to be a pivotal question for people in our generation, and we've stepped up our game from taking online free MBTI tests to using science, more specifically referring to DNA tests. So here in the studio, could you tell us how this works?
Well, mobile DNA testing has become a lot more popular among the millennials and Gen Z because we have the characteristic of wanting to find out more about ourselves, and they really want to find out their biological roots.
Okay.
And unlike the MBTIs or fortune telling or 사주 in Korean, which is also about learning about yourself, your personality traits, these DNA tests, they actually have a more scientific ground, which is more convincing, and they believe it's really literally more scientific and more believable. And they have a lot of categories, including their exercise habits or their skin and hair condition, for example, or the nutritious state they're in.
Or some of them tell you which sort of countries you might be from, where you originated, you know, your racial mix.
Yes, the racial mix is also part of it, and the categories range depending on the type of service or kit that you can buy, which I will explain later on. And actually last year, I myself also decided to get one of these DNA test kits, but I was lucky because I got a free one, as you see on the screen. That was the kit that I got for free. I had to make numeral trials to really click on that register button at 10 a.m. Early last year. And I got this kit, and as you see, there's a little bottle where you spit into, and they test your saliva from this bottle. After you spit into it, they have that serial code. You seal it well in a box, and you return it back to the institution that you got it from, and they will examine it. And I think I got my result after 2 weeks or so, and that's usually the average days in which you can get your test results.
We're seeing a lot of development thanks to science.
Yes, we are.
We used to go online and take that free 16 personality test on MBTI, but now people are stepping it up.
That was the hot topic of news generation.
I know, even till this day we do talk about MBTI. But it's quite interesting to see that a lot of the younger generation are using a diverse set of tests out there to find out about themselves. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the younger generation itself, many of us in this generation are exposed to innovation in technologies and are able to welcome them with open arms, as well as easily adapting to the new technologies. In fact, around 90% of the DNA genetic tests are taken by individuals in their 20s and 30s. As Chi tried out, these tests not only inform you of your genetic traits, but also a guideline into keeping your health. So from whether you're genetically blessed with strong lungs but have weaker livers, or which exercise fits you the best and what foods you must be aware of, And many who've tried the DNA genetic tests claim that it was worth their time and money as well.
Now I'm curious how you can actually try these DNA tests out. And you know, Chihi, you tried it out, so I think you're the best one to be talking to this about. So to what extent can you find out about yourself?
Right, first of all, how you can get this kits. You can get it online very easily from different sites that provide these, and the price ranges from $100. I think you'll explain it in detail later on. And you can also get it in some pharmacies as well. Okay. I got mine online. Yeah, once you apply it for online, you will get the kit delivered to you, and you'll have to find the guidelines and the directions that are inside to follow them and deliver your spit bottle so that you can get your cells tested. And like I said, you can find out different things through this test. And what I found out, and I would call them my superpowers and weakness. So one of my superpowers was that I was a lot more capable than the average people in Korea at maintaining my vitamin D level, which is crucial for people these days because office workers especially, they don't get to see the sunlight too much, right? But once I get my vitamin D, I'm able to maintain it. So that's one of my superpowers. And I really like.
You don't need much sunlight, you're saying.
Well, if I get some, I can keep it.
You become like a calcium superhero. Exactly.
I like the second superpower though.
What is it?
What is
so I have this DNA called the ACTN3 DNA. It's a DNA that's found in 75% of Jamaicans.
Oh, really?
So it makes me a very fast sprinter. Which is why I didn't know I was really enjoying running, and I was quite fast at it.
And I've actually witnessed you running, right? You're really fast. No wonder you have that DNA in you.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my second superpower. But I have one weakness that really devastated me when I found this out at first. I had the hair loss DNA.
Oh, no.
So I did some research on it.
Going bald?
Yes, I might go bald, and I thought I would really get bald when I get older, but I did some research and found out that this particular DNA, it's only manifested in men, thankfully. So I will not go bald.
As long as you stick to your own sexuality, it'll be all right.
All right, it's quite detailed as to how far you can know about yourself. Yes. Xian, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, so this test didn't tell you about where you're originally from, is it? Like you're not 75 Jamaican?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yes, so then can you elaborate on how we can use these tests?
Of course, I'll tell you a bit more about it. With the DNA genetic testing, you can find out a lot more accurate facts than the traits you would have guessed and deduced from living your life with your own body. So let's have a look at the screen to find out exactly which genetic traits you can find out from the testing that caught the eyes of the younger generation. One of the major findings will be whether you are susceptible to hair loss. This analysis in general includes various categories such as genetic hair thickness, grey hair, as well as alopecia areata, in simple terms, topical baldness. Other interesting traits include likelihood to suffer from obesity, as well as how fast your skin may age, insomnia, and dementia. So typically a general genetics testing will scan around 60 parameters or conditions you're likely to be interested in, including your ideal nutrition for your body type and general health guidelines, as I mentioned before.
Right, I think this is really nice because our generation, as we've mentioned throughout the past few days, is also interested in well-being and health. That's why we have concepts like healthy pleasure surface. So that might be a reason why a lot of people from our generation are trying to take these DNA tests. But are there other reasons why that we're trying to take MBTI or personal color? I mean, there's so many self-identity tests out there. And why do you guys think our generation is so fixated on taking them?
Yeah, I mean, the obsession comes from various different sources. You know, now, although Jihi had the pleasure of taking one of these DNA tests for, free of charge, the cost a considerable amount, starting from around $200, but going up to thousands depending on which service provider you choose or the choice of your package. So if you want more of an in-depth analysis, it might cost you more. Experts believe that this is due to many millennials and Gen Z's tendency to accept new technologies, as well as a growing desire to know better about oneself in an effort to take better care in theory. Such desire is colloquially known as meism, which also can be translated to egotism. And we expect to see actually an increase in various types of services to meet such desires in the near future, not just DNA genetic testing, but other sorts of lifestyle guidances and something more sort of customizable to your own standards.
Definitely. You mentioned meism, and I think it comes because a lot of people are in a one-person household. They're in a single-person household, meaning that they really prioritize what they do with their own times. You mentioned lifestyle, but the industry has also matched that demand.
Right.
Can you also elaborate on the reasons why our generation is so fixated on trying all these self-identity tests?
Well, in addition to what Shi-young mentioned and explained about meism, we're really interested in developing ourselves, understanding ourselves, identifying what traits we have, whether it be biological or the personality part. I feel like the society, social atmosphere also has something to do with this. We're living in a very hyper-competitive society, and I feel like by trying out these tests, these younger generations, they want to actually get their own unique characteristic, figure it out, and find a competitive edge for themselves so that they can really become a competitive individual in this society.
That's so true.
It is, and I also feel like they're being really smart with their lifestyle because, like you said, we're really interested in well-being. And for example, for me, I wanted to get my DNA tested because that was a few months before I decided to get a body profile shoot. And I really wanted to, figure out what exercise suits me. I wanted to figure out the right diet
if
plan.
you're Jamaican or not.
Yeah.
Whether I'm good at growing my muscles, my body is good at it, etc. So I think that's what the younger generation would like to do.
I cannot agree more. With socioeconomic standards elevating, I think we now have the luxury to find out about ourselves. And also self-PR, we want to brand ourselves in this hyper-competitive environment. Now let's move on to what our viewers had to say in regards to our discussion topic. We asked if any of our viewers tried these self-identity tests, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the trending online DNA test, but it could be simple as an allergy examination. So here's what 3 of them had to share. Take a look at the screen to find out. Let's start with Giselle. Giselle said, I did a personal color test a few years back. I'm spring bright, so bright, warm tone colors fit well on me. User said, I did a data analysis on all food that I ate because doctors seem useless at giving me the right prescription. They blame it on my genes and always tell me that my lesions are hereditary. Tears Bell says, when I was younger, I used to be allergic to a lot of things like cat hair, grass, etc. I took tests to see what I was allergic to, but now I've outgrown them. And we're now going to talk to a member of Gen Z from the States who has taken some of these tests. Through this live interview, let's better analyze the reasons behind our generation's need and demand to find out more about ourselves. We're now going to include a fellow Gen Z in our talks. He's Joseph Kim, studying in the U.S. at the moment. Welcome, Joseph.
Hello, Joe.
Hello.
All right, Joseph, so we've talked about self-identification tests. I'm curious as to whether you tried any out of them before, and if so, why?
Yeah, I tried one and offered in the U.S. called 23andMe. And obviously, similar to the reasons you guys talked about, I was interested in learning about myself, learning about health predispositions, as well as just any family history that could be involved.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, so 23andMe is obviously a very popular one as well. I think it's one of the companies that actually really made the DNA testing popular. So, I mean, which was your favorite things out of what you founded? And did you find anything new about yourself through the DNA genetics testing?
Yeah, there was nothing really interesting about my ethnic background. I'm 100% Korean, but something interesting I found was my family history. I was able to find some distant relatives, some second cousins once removed, which means we share great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, I'm sorry. And I was able to meet one of them, so that was really cool. Just being able to connect and learn about how our families kind of connect.
All right, so in the database of 23andMe, if your distant cousin that you never found out about also have taken the test, did they link you up, is it?
Yeah, that's exactly how they match it up.
Wow.
So
That's really interesting.
That's very interesting. Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that is.
We share about 1.7% of our DNA is shared, so
of course,
it tells you really accurate numbers like that.
Might be just a random Korean.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Right, so you had your own reasons for getting these tests done, but why do you think our generation in particular likes these tests and taking these types of tests?
Yeah, I think it's just about getting to know ourselves, just to understand who we are, why we are the way we are. It's obviously not the best way to diagnose ourselves. It shouldn't be used that way, but it's still great to be able to understand who we are. For me, for example, I learned about my hair texture. My hair is very curly. It's hard to manage, but now I understand it's my genetics. It's not it's something that's really weird about me.
Right, you're finding like the root to your self-identity, I guess. Thank you so much, Joseph, for sharing your experience. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And as a final note, here in the studio, what do you guys think are some pros with our generation being more keen on finding out more about ourselves? But at the same time, do you guys have any concerns with this sort of meism culture?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the DNA genetic testing is all pros without that many cons. It would be fantastic to be able to find out about your genetic traits so you're better aware of what could potentially be harmful for you health-wise as well as lifestyle-wise. The only issue I'd be concerned with here would be the reliability of these tests, of course, as well as concerns of data privacy, as many of these service providers often tend to be startups, and which may not always be fully responsible for the safekeeping and ethical usage of the collected DNA data from their clients. I mean, for example, as what Joseph said as well, it might not be agreeable. You might not have opted for the option for someone else to find genetically matching sample, but they might have just done it as part of the service. Nobody reads the fine print. No one knows what's actually going on.
You should read it. You should read all the
100 pages of lawyers' gibberish.
Yeah, maybe like a tip for all the companies who are trying these DNA tests online. Maybe make like a shorter consent forms for us to get the better idea. What about you, Dee? Any final notes?
I think one potential downside of all this trend would be the development of a self-centered attitude. So I believe it's good to understand yourself and find out about yourself, but then we should avoid creating a divisive culture where people divide
Koreans, Jamaicans,
or with like the similarities and differences that they find out through these tests. Make sure that they respect and also appreciate others' differences as well.
I can't agree anymore. And also, I think that as Joseph mentioned, you shouldn't rely it as like a health medical like forum or fully take it as like a diagnosis. Just take it for fun, you know, find out about yourself.
I think it's actually very important to also choose a reliable company.
That is very true.
You know, I actually Googled some of the, the DNA testing places, and a lot of them seem quite scammy. You know, there's a lot of similar sort of titles of websites, similar company names to the popular ones. And I think you should all be aware and choose a sort of more reliable ones if you're taking
as we mentioned earlier in our news feed, it all comes down to having better literacy and media literacy awareness. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Seong.
My pleasure.
And Chiji.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
New Generation.
Loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and